The next question is for Congressman Baldwin. In recent months, President Bush has repeatedly referred to the necessity and the urgency of the need for the United States to wean itself away from our dependency on oil. Do you agree with the President's assessment? But more importantly, what do you view as an appropriate American energy policy for the mid-range future?
Thank you. Well, first, in terms of your characterization of, I agree, I've heard those words come out of his mouth. But he has signed legislation that leads us in precisely the opposite direction. And I'm a very significant critic of the Energy Policy Act that was passed and signed into law last year because it provides very sizable subsidies in the billions of dollars to big oil to continue to prospect, if you will, and does very little in terms of resources on alternatives and renewables and conservation and appliance and automotive efficiency. What would I do? I think this is one of the greatest challenges facing this nation right now, and that it has economic implications. What happens to our economy when the headline appears, Saudi Arabia oil reserves reach peak? It has environmental consequences because by continuing in this direction, we are ignoring the very real threat of global warming. And it has national security implications because as long as we are dependent upon some pretty rough players out there for meeting the petroleum needs of this country, we have some very significant geopolitical and national security issues facing us. I believe that we need to announce an Apollo-scale energy project that will try to, well, will have as its goal eliminating reliance on polluting foreign sources of energy in 10 years. Most of you in this room, the vast majority of you, are way too young to remember President Kennedy speaking to the nation and saying, in a decade, we will land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. But that was leadership. And that leadership involved the marshaling of resources, getting the creative minds in this country, assigning them a mission, creating pride in achieving that mission, and making sure that the resources that needed to be there were there. We have so much of this knowledge already, but we haven't put it together. We haven't had that type of leadership. I think that an Apollo-scale energy project should have a number of components. Some of it has to be research and development. I don't think we've necessarily found all of the energy solutions that will guide us in the future. Fusion, for example, still has a ways to go, but we're making some progress. But we underutilize conservation techniques. We need to increase automobile fuel efficiency as well as appliance efficiency. We have a long way to go.
Mr. Megan.
Sir, just to wrap up that last question very succinctly, I agreed with President Clinton when he went into Kosovo to stop ethnic cleansing, and again I find it encouraging that Senator Feingold is applauding the administration for its renewed commitment to Darfur. As to energy, there are so many things that you young people in this room are going to play such a great role in, and you're going to such a great university here. President Bush said recently that there are initiatives now, potentially within 2 decades, we could generate 20% of this nation's energy needs just with wind power. Just with wind power. Can you imagine that? It's already being done. We have the technology. We just need to expand it. Nanotechnology. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but we're taking great strides. We could lead the world from right here at UW-Madison, just like we're leading the world on stem cell research. And I disagree with President Bush on stem cell research. I want to keep this research here where it was pioneered, and I want to do the same thing with nanotechnology. Some of you in the future are going to be running for this office. And can you imagine the great opportunity that a person in Congress has to be the ambassador for their district I hope so much to get hired for this job so that I can expose to people from all over the world this incredible university system that we have. Look at the diversity of this district with agriculture and all of the things that with biotech, hydrogen fuels. I absolutely believe that within my kids' lifetime that we're going to see hydrogen fuel cells in our vehicles, and that's going to supplant the need for fossil fuel use. But right now, we are dependent on fossil fuels, and we have to get out from this vice that big oil abroad and big oil at home, what this is doing to us. I don't believe that, well, you saw this, the congressional hearings with the concerns about price gouging. Congress called big oil executives up to the hill and they had to testify. All of a sudden, oil prices went down. Coincidence? I think not. We need to, again, I've said this already tonight, we need to use the bully pulpit to keep pressure on these companies that take advantage of both prices at the pump and make sure they're adhering to environmental requirements. We need to immediately rescind the concessions that were made by the federal government. When oil prices were down, there were a number of concessions that were made to oil companies. We need to immediately rescind and go back retroactively and have those oil companies pay these fees that they should have paid, that they haven't paid. That's something that I will fight to do in Congress.
Congressman Bolton.
Well, in a minute, I'm going to try to go from the very local to the global. On the very local, yes, it is important to be a champion for your district, and I am. In this arena alone, I have brought tens of millions of dollars back to this area for hydrogen fuel cell research and development, for battery research, and for nanotechnology. This is stuff that is incredibly important to our future, and if this president won't prioritize it, I sure plan on it. And I will continue to fight for those resources, both so we can live in a cleaner and energy-efficient future, but also because it's about economic development in this region. On the global level, our behavior on this issue of energy and climate change affects our stature in the world profoundly. We have news and information that blocks of ice as big as Rhode Island are falling into the ocean, and we continue to pretend we don't see this. We need to change our behavior.
Mr. Magner, 1 minute.
I negotiate in business for a living. I find it absolutely appalling that Wisconsin ranks number 47 out of 50 in returning federal dollars to the state. And I find it amazing that Congresswoman Baldwin continues to boast about dollars coming back to Wisconsin when we rank 47 out of 50. And, you know, since we're talking about gas prices, when the rest of us were wincing to put that $3.25 gallon gas in our car this summer, Tammy Baldwin voted to give herself a pay raise to $168,500 a year. Democrats Dave Obey in Wisconsin didn't do that. Ron Kine didn't do that, but she did it. She's that out of touch with the people of this district that $165,000 when all of these meals are being. I've said in my ethics reform, I will never accept a pay raise. What moral authority do you have to talk about that when you give yourself a pay raise when the rest of us are struggling just to put gas in our tanks?